Okay. Good morning, members. I won't use the bell as a deadly hush has fallen over the meeting already. So welcome to this meeting of the Peak District National Park Authority on Friday the 15th of March. He just reminds himself. If we can go into the agenda. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillors Nash, Heath, Warmby and Hart and Ms Harling. And Yvonne Witter is running a little bit late because her bus didn't arrive on time. So she's hoping to join us in 10 or 15 minutes. Can we move on to item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting? Can I have someone to propose those minutes? Simon, thank you. And second, Patrick, thank you.
Chair, could I just check on item 724, page 7,
Yep.
that you did get clarification from Ms Ars on that very large movement in so-called other experiences for the pension fund before you signed off the accounts?
Yep. Can we just take a vote on accepting the minutes and then we'll come on to that if you don't mind, Simon. So can I have a vote? All those in favour of accepting the minutes? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. There. Abstention. Thank you, Chris. One abstention. So just picking up on that, yeah, I'd noticed that as well. And have we had any clarification from Mazars?
I think it was my understanding that Ms Ars were going to send the information actually, so I will chase that up. Apologies, I thought that was going to be done directly.
I've had nothing. No.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So the short answer, Simon, is no, but it will be chased, so thank you for that. If we can move, in that case, well, item 3 on the agenda is urgent business. I've not been informed of any, nor under item 4 have I been informed of any public participation. Item 5 on the agenda, are there any declarations of interest that members wish to make at this stage? You've had the pro forma that you can submit with your confessional. So no declarations of interest, in which case we move on to items for information, the Chair's briefing. So from my perspective, since the last meeting of the authority on the 2nd of February, I've participated in an introductory meeting with leaders and Chief Exec of Staffordshire Moorlands District Council and High Peak Borough Council. I attended also an interesting presentation, a Europark conference on the use of remote sensing and the like in peatland recovery, which I understand quite a few colleagues from Moors for the Future also participated in, which was led by someone from the North Pennine National Landscape. It was quite interesting what they were doing in terms of peatland restoration. Also attended the CNP meeting ahead of the launch of their health check report on the state of nature in national parks, which is, I think, also in the report that our Chief Exec has presented as part of this meeting. That publication will appear on the 10th of April. The meeting back on the 28th of February was an opportunity for national park authorities to comment on the issues as presented verbally before they were finalised, and gave us the opportunity, I think, not least, to remind people that so much in terms of nature recovery and management of landscape is out with our direct control, for example. Subsequent to that, with our Chief Exec, Phil Mulligan, met with the independent mayoral candidate for the East Midlands Combined Council Authority, Matt Relf, which was interesting. Also attended a briefing with Dale on the use of AI in assessing land cover in the Peak District, which I have referred to before, and I think that I thought at the time and previously that it was suitable for rollout to members if the opportunity could be found, and I'm hoping that in one of the members' fora, not perhaps the next one but the one after that, that we may be able to engage the entire membership in updating on that initiative that the National Park Authority has been running along with partner organisations such as Cranfield University. On Monday last, had an introductory meeting with the Chief Exec and leader of Staffordshire County Council, which was instructive. Again, it was with Phil Mulligan. And then yesterday, I attended a briefing on the development and the launch next week of the East Midlands Combined Council Authority, to which both Phil and I will be going in Chesterfield, which will be the base for the mayor, or whatever that elected person decides to call themselves. Barry Lewis did suggest, I think he was joking, that if he had been a successful candidate, he would have wanted to be called King, which I make no further comment, really. And as well as those meetings, I've attended various other meetings in the organisation planning committee, and at the moment, Phil and I are trawling through what is currently 81 applications for the shortlisting on Monday for the post of Head of Resources. So that's all I have to report on, members. Kath.
Could I raise an issue, please, on page 13, 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down? Funding has been provided by Active Travel England for £100,000 to work on walking and cycling strategies.
Well, I think we're just coming on to that item next, Kath, if you can just bear with me for a moment, because that's the Chief Exec's report, which I was going to introduce and ask Phil if he had any additional items to report on. Janet.
Yeah, I don't want to prolong the meeting. I just want to pick up on the item you mentioned about the AI. I know Ruth Swetnam's going to be involved in discussions with them as well, so I'd like to point that out. But it's something that Ken's alluded to, but it's work being run by two of the authority's staff, Simon Geeky and David Alexander. And it really is groundbreaking work where they're looking at getting a much better resolution on habitat throughout the park, and it's going to enable the authority and our landowners and policymakers to make much more nuanced decisions about the best use for the land, for nature recovery, for and for other activities. So I think we should congratulate those two members of staff for the work they're doing in that, because it really is groundbreaking. They're working with a range of universities, and it's getting published in really good quality journals as well.
Thanks for that amplification, Janet. It's just checking with Phil that we hope to bring something to Members Forum in July. So, yeah. So, in that case, if we can move on to agenda item 7, which is the Chief Exec's report. Phil, you have one or two items that you wish to update on that report?
Yeah, morning members. I put quite a lot in the report again, so if there are things people want to pick up and discuss, very happy to do that. Right now, I'm just going to add some extra items that have come in since. So in the report, I mentioned a couple of meetings that are planned, so they've now happened. So the first one was with Toby Perkins, who is the Shadow Nature and Rural Affairs Lead for Labour. He's Chesterfield MP. So we had him on a visit last Friday to the park. Fantastic effort by colleagues pulling together a programme to really show him what rural affairs are like in a national park. So we went and saw some housing issues. So we went to Colonel Wright's Close up in Bakewell, which is our award-winning, relatively large scheme, and we talked about those housing issues there. We then talked about farming. In terms of rural issues in a national park, and we went and met some farmers. People have been funded through the FIPL scheme. We went to the Dilks Milkshake Dairy, and we met a number of farmers there. So that was really good to show him what FIPL has been able to achieve for farm diversification and support. And we had some other farmers come along as well to that. And then we went from there to Millersdale to look at the kind of the tourism in a national park, those kind of visitor issues. So it was a really great visit. He gave us a lot of time, and I felt he went away knowing a lot more about what some rural affairs are in a national park, which he wouldn't otherwise have had. We've also, since the report, met with Homes England. So that was a really good result that ourselves and some of the district councils at High Peak, Staffordshire Moorlands and Derbyshire Dales, we wrote jointly to Homes England on the issue of the extra cost of building affordable houses in a national park. We went feeling it wasn't quite fair that the same money was given for building a house in the centre of Derby or Nottingham as it was for building one, you know, in Tideswell or anywhere where, obviously, in a national park, protected landscape, there's higher design standards, there's potentially higher contractor costs. Well, the outcome was, you know, revelatory for us all, really, and very positive, that Homes England was saying first of all, that rural housing is their priority. So affordable housing in rural areas is a priority for them. That was good to hear. Secondly, there is no set limit for a house. They know it costs more to build in protected landscapes, and they're prepared to offer extra grant for that. So that was a really good kind of extra piece of information that I think we had one of the representatives from one of the big housing associations there as well, and I think it was news to all of us. So that was a really good outcome from that. And then since the report was written, we've had another delivery group meeting for our National Park Management Plan. So that was that's where we pulled together kind of more kind of officer level across all the partners, and we look at how we're doing. We had a great presentation from Chatsworth on their whole estate plan and from the National Trust on their High Peak plan. But what was really interesting was when I said to all of those in that partnership delivery group who are from public bodies, I said, how are you responding to the new duty that is now on you to further the purposes of national parks? And no one really had any understanding of what that duty meant. They hadn't considered it at all, which is not surprising, but is slightly worrying. However, we've seen, just this week, we've had something from DEFRA saying that they do want to produce non-statutory guidance on what this new duty means for everyone. But because it's going to affect kind of everyone, they need cross-government sign-off for whatever they put out. So that's going to take a bit of time. So they're planning on consulting over the summer on what their guidance is going to say. So it's going to be a little while, but at least that's coming. The other thing we've had from DEFRA is we're going to have a new outcomes framework, and we're going to have targets that we're going to have to meet. And what we've now got is a timetable from DEFRA setting out when they're going to release the data, when they're going to develop the data. And so there's now a timetable for that. There's quite a lot of data that need to come out and be given to us in April. So we'll see. I think that is quite challenging for that to be met. And there is a contract that's been let for consultants to work out the apportionment. So some of this data is produced at a national level, and we need to be given our kind of share of it. So that is all going to be done by consultants. So I think we're in a kind of a wait and see on what the data looks like. So they were the updates, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Now, I know that report occurs in the for information section of the agenda, but given that we've changed the delivery, so there is a more extensive report, a written report from Phil, I think it's appropriate if members have any questions or queries of him or what he's written or said. Kath Potter, I know you had something on page 13.
Yes, I did. Paragraph 4. Funding has been confirmed via Active Travel England for £100,000 for us to work on walking and cycle strategies locally. I would like it stated, please, in your minutes, that I've asked for the parishes affected by this to be notified. In 2013, I came to a meeting here on the 8th of May, I think it was, and I learned that there was to be a cycle trail that was going to affect Roseley. I knew nothing about it, and yet all the comments had to be in by the 30th of April. And this was the 10th of May. No, 13th of May, sorry. So I am conscious that I think we should be upfront in discussing with the parishes affected by our thoughts on extending any cycle trails, please.
Thanks, Kath. I'm sure those comments will be taken on board by officers.
I have found out in this room on the 10th of May the comments have to be in by the 13th of April.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That was 11 years ago, though, wasn't it?
Yes, I've
Yep.
never forgotten it.
Okay.
Can I just say, Chair, that at the moment, Kath, what we've got is we've got the funding secured. Okay, so there's not anything yet, and what it will be spent on will be on trying to develop those strategies. So they haven't been developed yet, and of course it would be for officers to consult with parishes and local communities about anything that's proposed, but you know, nothing's happened yet that you should be aware of and are not.
Okay. Any other questions, queries, comments? Ruth Swetnam.
Thank you. Phil, you were saying about this extra potential money that Homes England have recognised is necessary for building housing in the national park. Did they give any indication of the mechanism for that money to come our way, or who it needs to get to? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it was recognised that it costs probably around £15,000 to £17,000 extra to build a 2 to 3 bedroom property in a national park. So we've got a kind of a number on it roughly. It's for the actual developers to apply for the funding. So it's not for us. It will be, you know, we'd be supportive of the planning, you know, and so on. And now we can go back to those developers and really let them know this. And as I say, it was news to the developers in the room, and it was news to, you know, we were certainly being lobbied by developers that they couldn't afford to build in national parks. So, and I don't think this was a new policy position from Homes England. So it is quite strange that people were unaware, or that there was a misconception that there was just a standard amount per house wherever it was. So I think I think actually the constraint mainly is the sites to actually build the housing. I mean, if you know, there's what's the need, and we've got ways of working that out, and we're going to discuss some of that in the members' forum. So we've got to kind of establish the need, then we've got to find the sites, and then we've got to find the funding. Well, the funding bit is much stronger now as a result of this. The sites, that's still, you know, a tricky to find those sites that comply with policy and that are, you know, available.
But I think in addition, the interesting other element for me was that there was confirmation that they would consider applications for single house build, which is often more expensive or most expensive rather than quantity, which again has been something that's always been presented as a bit of a stumbling block for development. So I think there's quite a lot of good news come from that as a result of that meeting, which is a result of the letter that was sent into Homes England by ourselves, Derbyshire Dales and Staffordshire Moorlands District Councils. Okay, if there are no further comments or queries, we can move on to items for decision. Item 8. Before we do that, I'd like to say or introduce Ben Cookson is our interim finance manager, and on Monday our new finance manager, Sinead Butler, started. She will be working in partnership with Ben, or she'll be leading as finance manager, working as in overlap with Ben until the end of May, end of May, when she will take over completely full responsibility. But Ben has prepared this report, and we'll speak to any questions, unless there are any additional elements that you wish to present to membership.
No.
Okay, so in that case, members, do you have any comments or questions on the report? Reminding ourselves that we've been tweaking the way we present our reports to committees, so we don't have a full-fledged officer presentation, but what we have done is tweak further since last meeting. We have the recommendations on the screen so that people with sharp eyes at the back can read them. I can see Andrew squinting. Specsavers, I believe, is the place, Andrew. So those are there. You will have read the reports, I anticipate, including the lengthy duplication of the North Yorkshire Council report. Do you have any comments, members, against the recommendations? Charlotte.
It's not a comment on sort of the body of the report as such. It's just that it does say there's no climate change implications. But I think where investment strategies are concerned, we do need to consider the implications of divestment from fossil fuel. And we don't seem to have asked what North Yorkshire's strategy is. It would be nice to know that, and, you know, to recognise that, well, ethically we probably should be, we should be divesting, and also fossil fuel investments will become increasingly risky. So it was just really that I don't agree there are no implications on climate change.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you for that comment. Anything that you wish to respond on that, Ben?
So yeah, it's a valid point. So I will have a look through the actual North Yorkshire Council because they might make reference to climate change and what they actually invest in. So it's worth having a read through that just to see what they say, and then I can come back to you on that.
It seemed to me the majority of investment is made through formal banks and things like that for the in the North York Council document. Simon Thompson.
Yes, Chair. This is the first time I've seen this statement, so I've got actually a number of questions. Do you mind if I take them one at a time?
Please do.
Can I just confirm what interest we're paying on borrowings against reserves? Is it fixed or floating?
Fixed.
The proposed new borrowings here, will they be fixed rate or floating rate?
Yeah, so the proposed new borrowing will
Put your
be,
mic on.
sorry. So the proposed new borrowing will be internal borrowing. So we will base it on the Public Works Loan Board, the fixed rate as when we take out the borrowing. So we won't actually take out the new borrowing, but we'll use their rate.
Right. So we are. Yeah, I mean, in effect, if you look, are we going to continue to book both the reserves and the loans separately? In other words, will we have interest receivable on the reserves and interest payable on the loan? Is that how it works? Is that how it runs through our books?
Sorry, could you just rephrase that?
So we're borrowing against reserves.
Yeah.
So we have reserves, which is a credit, and the borrowing, which is a debit.
Yeah.
We're paying interest, obviously, on the borrowing. You say we're using PWLB rate, fixed rate.
Yeah.
On the reserves, on the cash, as it were, we're receiving effectively a variable rate because it's short term. I'm just trying to establish whether there's a mismatch and therefore a carrying cost loss that we may be suffering.
I'll have to come back to you on that, if that's okay.
That's fine. The other observation was that 28% of the portfolio that North Yorkshire are investing our money in is to local authorities. I just wanted to check whether that includes, for example, Woking or Birmingham.
Or Croydon.
I mean, is there? Are you aware at least of a process? Because I'm not worried about the credit risk. Ultimately, I suspect the money will come back, but there may be a liquidity risk there just because of delays, because they're rescheduling their debts.
Yeah, so the SLA with North Yorkshire Council is already in place until 2025. So this is just updating the actual strategy, which you have to do on an annual basis. But in terms of querying what the SLA is, I can certainly have a look into that for you.
Okay, thank you. And could you at the same time just confirm that no PDNPA money is being invested in their non-treasury investments? There's a very long section that you distributed to members on non-treasury investments. I don't know why it's there. I presume it's not relevant, but it would be good just to confirm that none of our money is going into their non-treasury investments.
Yeah, okay, I can have a look at that.
And then finally, just an observation that the graph that North Yorkshire have on page 42 of your report, I thought was extremely helpful because it really does summarise in a single graphic the liability benchmark position in a very informative way. It'd be really nice to have a similar graph for the PDNPA.
Yeah.
Because I think that your table 8.5 on page 29, doesn't actually include the future forecast borrowings. It's showing the current position. It doesn't show the forecast position. So actually members aren't able to see what the liability benchmark will look like in future years.
Okay, well, I'll make sure that's included.
Thank you. And then the final comment, I think the resolution is wrong. I think all of the cross-references to the sections there are wrong. I think the annual investment strategy should be section 5, the interest rate strategy section 6, the borrowing strategy section 7, the prudential indicators section 8 and the minimum reserve provision policy is section 9. Unless I'm mistaken, I mean, but that's how I read the paper.
I think that last point is particularly important and we're going to move the recommendation. Can you confirm that, please, Ben, as to whether the recommendation is correct?
The future graph will show an eventual tail. Exactly. On we've had it without the authority.
I just want to see whether it's heading in the right direction.
Well, it should be. But yeah, you'd like to see it clearly stated, wouldn't you? The thing is, have you posed enough questions for this to be deferred to
Yeah,
the next meeting?
You're absolutely right. I apologise. I don't know why that's out of sync, but yeah, totally right.
In that case, picking up on Simon's comments, Ruth, can we change the recommendation so that members can see it?
You mean on the screen now?
Well,
No.
to make
Sorry.
to make sure in that case that the recommendation that we're asked
Yes,
to
if you
approve
approve
is
it,
correct.
subject to the amended section reference.
Okay. Thank you, Simon, for the eagle eye analysis. Did you take down the correct section numbers from Simon?
You just add 2 to each one.
Okay. But I think the recommendation is that we approve the recommendation subject to the alterations as outlined. Yeah? Is that correct, Ruth?
Subject to the amendments to the sections.
Yep. So subject to amendments to the section numbers that are in parentheses in each from 2 through to 5 of the recommendations. They will be increased by a figure of 2, I believe. That's the amendment to the recommendation. Are there any further comments or questions prior to Janet Dugdale?
Yes, Simon.
Simon, yeah, could you put your mic off? Thank you. Mike.
I think Simon's eagle eye is really helpful here, but can I ask about our relationship with North Yorkshire in this context? I think, Ben, you mentioned that the relationship is in place till 2025, I think that's what you said. What happens then and what are our choices then? Because we've got a range of questions that have been asked that we might not be able to do anything about until then, including, you know, the climate change and fossil fuels investment. What are the opportunities for us before 2025 to make any changes to this? And what can we do from 2025? Do we just roll over and stay with North Yorkshire, or will we be undertaking a review to see what alternatives there are out there?
Yeah, so there's a 6-month notice period with North Yorkshire. So we do need to have a conversation soon, I guess, about what we want to do. So I don't think it's a good idea to bring it in-house. I don't think we've got the skills or the experience or resources to do it in-house. So we would need an SLA with some authority or organisation. So we do need to explore that, but we've got to bear in mind there is a 6-month notice period.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or queries? If not, can I have a proposer for the amended recommendations as they've been described? Janet Dugdale, thank you. Seconder? Someone? Mike Chaplin, thank you very much. All those in favour, please show of hands. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. That's passed. We can move on to, in that case, thank you, Ben. We'll move on to agenda item 9, which is the pay review policies. A fresh set of recommendations will presumably appear, and Teresa will... Oh, just been lasered. Okay, so agenda item 9 then is pay review policies. Teresa, are there any additional comments that you wish to make? There was a verbal update to be given under paragraph 16 on finances, for example.
Yeah, that's correct. So the policies went to RMM on the 12th of March, and that was really to come to an agreement on how the incentive arrangements would be funded.
Oh, sorry.
So as I said, went to RMM on the 12th of March to agree how the incentive arrangements would be funded. We currently have 9 hard-to-fill posts that we've identified, and they've got a various number of incentives proposed to help fill them. It's difficult to say with certainty what the additional cost will be at this time. The worst case scenario will be around 32,000. The cost would be charged to the recruiting service, i.e. the service that's got the vacancy, and be funded by vacancy savings and also budget underspends. Any overspends would be funded from the operational effectiveness reserves.
Thanks, Teresa. On the basis, therefore, of the report and that addendum, any comments or questions? Mike Chaplin?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the 32,000. Was that per department or was that across the authority?
That would be across. It's a worst case scenario estimate on what we might have to pay around incentives. But I'd also like to add that we've, of those 9 hard to fill posts, we've actually got offers to individuals on 5. So it just remains 4 hard to fill posts at the moment.
Okay.
So did you do some modelling then ahead of this as to what it might
yes,
cost us?
Working
in
with
terms?
Ben, we've done some modelling on that, but actually the worst case scenarios might not actually come to fruition. We might actually be able to get people with not the full gambit of incentives.
So it's well under 1% of the overall salary budget then, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Andrew Gregory, then Patrick Brady, then Janet.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to move this recommendation. This is an excellent report. Thank you, Teresa. This is well overdue in terms of approach generally from local authorities and national parks. As far as I'm concerned, this is an excellent initiative in actually dealing with what is a major problem for many of us, retention and recruitment. So I have absolutely no hesitation in suggesting, Chair, that this report be accepted and the recommendations be approved.
Thank you, Andrew. Patrick Brady.
Chairman, I'm happy to second it, but I think, sorry, excuse me, it is a very good report and it's overdue. My only slight concern, and I think it lies outside the report rather than within it, is there are various references to points where decisions are made, particularly by somebody called managers. And I'm not quite sure what a manager is in this context. And I think it needs somewhere in the system, and it's probably within our delegation scheme, some clear indications as to who makes the decisions here and where the buck stops. Because a manager can be 15th down on the left-hand side somewhere, but I'm not sure who's making the decisions which says that somebody gets this payment and somebody gets that payment and so on and so forth. So I think maybe another bit of work is needed to make sure that those decision-making points are clear as to who does what.
I'm assuming in this case that it's the manager who has responsibility for each particular post, but Teresa?
Well, that's I think why that needs to be thought through really, because actually, well, for the reasons I've said, I mean, when you start making golden hellos and all the rest of it, it does require a decision at a slightly higher level than that, and somebody needs to be clear about where that's being said.
Sure. Yep. Teresa?
Sorry that I've not made it clear within it, Patrick. When I refer to the manager in the policy, I'm referring to the recruiting manager, i.e. the manager who is whose post it is, and they're responsible for filling it. But any decision around any incentive payment is got 3 controls. So the case has to be made by the recruiting manager. It has to be sponsored by the head of service and supported by the chief finance officer and also the senior people manager in the organisation. So those sit at second tier. So I'm envisaging that's a sufficiently high level of responsibility for this. And with the people in chief finance, you've got that consistency where any hard to fill vacancy could come from a different service. You're going to have that consistent monitoring, if you like.
I hear what you say. I still think I'd like to be clear about it at some point down the line, but I'm happy to have seconded the motion.
Yeah. I beg your pardon, Mike?
That a paragraph be inserted into the report on the lines that Teresa has just explained to us.
Yeah, I thought that
That just makes it
was
clear.
fairly clear in the report. It is in the report.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I understand Patrick's concern, but I think that it is in the report. I don't think there's any need to duplicate effectively what's in there. Yeah, paragraph 9.3 in the report or in the policy. Yeah, there is a section 9 on approval process, which I think fairly comprehensively covers the issues that Patrick has raised. As well, I think we know Patrick's concerns, but I think we need to test the document as written at this stage, I would suggest. Are there any other comments or questions? Janet Dugdale.
Yeah, Teresa and everyone who's worked on this, congratulations, but also thank you for putting all the detailed consultation information in there. For us as members, it's really helpful to see that process, but also understand the range of debate that's gone on behind and before it gets to us. So it shows that it's really, the tyres have been kicked on this by staff, so thank you. And if it hadn't been proposed and seconded, I would have done so by now. I have got one question, because I always do. It talks about identical jobs. And how many identical jobs do we have? And is there a danger? Are we clear what an identical job is? And is there a danger that it might be a cause of dispute?
It's a very good point. It's a very good point you make, Janet. We don't have that many identical posts, particularly that are affected by this. But in the planning service, for example, we do have planners, we do have senior planners, we do have principal planners. And so it's where posts have exactly the same job description.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? If not, we've had the paper proposed and seconded. Could I have a show of hands? All those in favour, please? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. That's unanimous. In which case, item 10, reports from outside bodies. We have none. So thank you, members. We can conclude this meeting and relax. The